Late, we had an extension of the Education Committee, which is certainly noteworthy, and we'll hear more about that later. I'd like to open the meeting with public comments. Are there any members of the audience who would like to address the board at this time? If not, we can move on to the finance report, the treasurer's report. We need a motion to accept it.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good, we can move on then. Budget status report is for your information. The Finance Committee report, I've spoken with Renee, and she is working with Chris and Tim and others to have a general outlook as to what the budget looks like. The Finance Committee will start to meet in September. As most of you know, we have to have our budget prepared by, I think it's January 15th, something like that. Tim, is that about right, wherever you are?
Right, by the 23rd.
Is the 23rd?
Yep.
Anyway, it's the middle of the latter part of January, so we'll have a lot of work to do. What I'd like to ask the board to do is give it some thought as to where you would like to see that budget come in. There are always two aspects of it that have to be considered. One is the impact on the tax rate. And the other is the amount of money that is either increased or decreased from the previous budget. We put those two things together, and those are both issues that have to be addressed. I know, once again, that Renee has started to work on this. She's been extremely busy, and we're getting started a little late, so we'll have a lot of work to do in a relatively short period of time. And once she's able to establish a schedule, we'll get it out to you as soon as we possibly can. But I'd like to just have you give some thought to the budget and your ideas as to where you would like to see it go for the next fiscal year. Consent agenda, Fran?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on any items?
I'd just like to note that we have a teacher retiring, Mr. Turn retiring he's at the high school now, but was at the middle school for many years, so we could just have the clerk send a letter.
Yes, very good. The clerk?
Yes, sir.
I know that the administrators are often happy to help with that too.
Yes, I'll get in touch and we'll work together and get that done. But thank you for bringing it to our attention. Are there any other issues that anybody would like to address concerning the consent agenda? If not,
You got the nomination thing on here. I just like the way it came out this time, that with a clear explanation of some of the new positions with the people's background and so forth in there, right on the text from Ashley. So that's just a comment to say I think that's the thing in the right direction.
any other comments? All those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? We can move on then. Policy. We don't have,
He's not here.
he's not here today. Amy, would you like to go over
I
it?
wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay.
So now you're back to me.
Yeah, I get that, Leon.
Can't escape. You had policy number 5180, tobacco prohibition. It's for warning on that, and it was in the packet for everybody to read. One of the things that we had a couple of changes we had in terms of, since the last time you saw it, was the word from student to person, and we added in on the second page under the other section C, visitors, we struck out who uses tobacco, and so that the sentence would read others on school grounds. That cleared up and make sure it was clear. So I would urge you to proceed with this policy in its warning form.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on it? Any further discussion on it? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Very good. Leon?
Okay, policy number 7100 is board members' education, and we made two changes on that, and one was that line 10, the word from wheel to can, And as a result of some of the other districts around did not want the strong language to be directing them to be able to take the opportunity of training, the training events that were being offered, but they can take them, and that way we can move on with the policy. And this day and time, it was also brought to our attention that on line 33, we needed to add in diversity and equity awareness training for the board members. So I would strongly endorse the efforts for you to pass this on in the adopted form.
I move to adopt.
And a second?
Second.
Second, get that. Any excuse me, further discussion on that? All those in favor, once again, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. We can go down then to the administrator's report. Steve, how do you want to do this? Do you want to wait for the education committee, or do you want to
Yeah,
go?
that's gonna be.
Yeah, but there was something, we have two things. One thing you asked me about last month,
Right,
and for guidance.
yeah.
So we're just gonna touch on those real quick.
okay, good.
The first thing that I'd like to say before we move on is I'd like to offer congratulations and thanks to all the students and staff members who put on a fabulous musical at the high school this past weekend. They did a wonderful job, and I hope you all got to see their efforts. And with special attention to this young man here, who you may know, Jason made his dramatic debut and was on stage all 4 nights, correct? And he manned the barricades and didn't get killed to the second attack, so he did a great job. So just wanted to give them congratulations. Last month, Tim, you asked me
Yes.
if I could have someone from guidance come in and share with the board an overview of what guidance does. And so this is Nancy Vanderbilt. She's the head of our guidance department, and she's going to give you a quick overview of some of the things that guidance does for our young people.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hi.
Hi.
So the role of the school counselor is to support students in their social, emotional, post-secondary, and academic needs, also in times of crisis as well. We start by promoting students to find their pathway. It begins during 8th grade. We start in December when the 8th graders come over to the high school. They have a tour of the Career Development Center as well as the high school itself. There's a small presentation. Students are then led on a tour throughout the building. The counselors then go back to the middle school in March, and we do a one-on-one meeting with the student and also with the parents. And we review their course selection sheets. We talk about their likes and dislikes, their passions, their interests. And we give them an overview of the CDC and also what Mount Anthony has to offer. As they come in to freshman year, the students start with the summer freshman orientation. They then have the first day of school is dedicated only for freshmen for that year, to the beginning of the school year, where they have sort of like this little passport where they get themselves familiar with the building. And then they also begin their high school personalized learning plans, is when they start that with their actual seminar that they'll be with for the next 3 years. Students then have the opportunity to start taking introductory courses at the Career Development Center. They have one-on-one individual meetings again with the school counselor, and they start working with our VSAT counselor if they qualify for that. Sophomore year, you can see it's just like a timeline that just goes through. We do all of that. It starts to increase to the ability to start taking introductory classes over at CCV through Introduction to College Studies. Students can then start to do there's like all different opportunities that come about, such as Women Can Do, which is a program for young girls in grades 9 through 12. They can go to Vermont Technical College for the day, and they can experience what it would be like to work in a male-dominated field and sort of perk their interest in the science and math. Junior year, we start with students can take ASVAB exam. There's a junior experience that we're doing. This year is new. It's similar to the sophomore summit that's offered sophomore year. where the students will have panelists come for career, college, and also military, and they'll have a half a day, sort of a retreat in the building to expose them to those pathways again. Students are able to enroll in the dual enrollment program or classes at our local colleges. This year, we're actually starting to collaborate more with our local manufacturers. We just had a meeting this afternoon, and we're setting up a field trip for our students that are juniors and seniors to start going to the manufacturing, like it's going to be Mac Molding and K&E Composites, to see what they have to offer for them. By senior year, our students start to really dive into finding what works for them. Sometimes it's more about what they don't really particularly like rather than what they really do like, which helps form where they want to go. Women Can Do is available. College representatives come all throughout the months of September, October, November, December, meeting with students in small groups or one-on-one. The counseling department does a presentation to the seminars in regards to college, and then we also have Erin Dickey from the Department of Labor and Sergeant Mark Slade come, and they do a presentation to the entire class, because we believe that exposure in all of those fields is going to hopefully spark something for the students of some type of interest. Students can attend Hudson Valley Community College and Berkshire Community College field trips. We offer evening presentations. Megan McMahon from MCLA came and did a presentation along with Rhonda Kelly from VSAC. The manufacturing field trip will also be open to seniors and juniors, ASVAB, College Fair, and you name it. So everything is available to our students. We have a timeline, and we try to expose students to every branch.
Are you looking for questions now, or?
I don't know. I was told to come here and do this, so I did it. And
You did
Done.
it.
Always good to do what you're told.
Yeah. Well,
It's a lot,
there
so
will be some questions,
Okay.
and perfectly free if you feel that you'd like some time to think about them. You don't have to answer them in detail at all. Nelson.
Have you gone to students who have graduated from here? I'm thinking of this, I'll throw my daughter out at this. Chemical engineer, come in and talk about those career paths? And because there'll be students that went through the school,
Right.
and they can explain the process they went through, and I'm sure there's a lot of them out there that would do that. You just
I
have
know
to
that the
reach.
School to Work office does that during Career Week. We have people, I know that they love to bring in MEU graduates or even local Vermont that come back and discuss how they became popular, or where they got to where their achievement is. And so, yes, there's a whole week of outside returns that come back to us.
Yeah, because
Mm.
all three of mine are in different fields, but I know that they would probably more than be glad to explain that process.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
This has to do with students that are in the junior and senior year, and probably mainly the senior year, where they may have taken classes earlier, and then they're at the point that they are junior or senior and they don't have a full load. The Department of Education, when we met in Lake Moray, they talked about 25 or 30% of the students that go out, and they go out into the world and they come back, and all of a sudden they realize, oop, I made a mistake. And I don't have enough, I'm trying to get trained in a certain area that I should have got when I was in high school, when I got a free boat. Now I gotta pay for it. And so my question is, how can we get the students to take a full load of opportunity, a high school education, when it's free, than to wait until they get out to discover they need to do something, and then they gotta pay out of the pocket for it?
On my caseload, every year, I might have 1 or 2 students that may have to leave a little bit early to attend to a job. There might be financial difficulties at home that the parents rely on them to help. But most of our students stay for, regardless of whether they have finished their required number of credits to graduate, they stay to either complete CDC programs or they stay because they want to enhance their skills, and we encourage them. We, even if they finish their third math credit, we always hope that they would take another one. We always encourage them to take another. And then they also, a lot of our students take advantage of the college classes. We have Vermont Technical College has Calculus 1, and so those students, even though they fulfill the requirements, they'll take that class and they will graduate with a high school credit. Same with the dual enrollment classes over at CCV, SVC, Bennington College, Williams College. So that's, I think, is our carrot to have them stay, as long as they have an option for them, and I think they'll take it.
I have a question. We have a large percentage of kids that go on to college. We also have a disappointing rate of students that drop out of college once they're in there. It's much higher than the national average. Do we do anything about that, or have you looked into the reason for that high dropout rate?
I know that a few years ago the secretary had called all of the students who had graduated and was finding out that rate for us. A lot of it boils down to finances. They have the first year they can manage pretty well, but then the debt accrues, and then the families are unable to pay for the second and third year or fourth year.
Well, if that is true, then what do we do about that?
Well, we don't
Might be a
have any.
question beyond today.
That's what I don't want to get into. But anyway,
Yeah, that's what I was asking. I guess, Tim, that was what I was
14th and
talking
15th
about.
grade, but-
And those kids come back to the community here, and they have no skill. And that's what everybody's addressing, that 25 or 30%. And I'm saying guidance should be looking at these students when we're saying proficiency and learning what to do and so forth out here, to make sure that everybody is definitely clear on the path of education so that they can provide for themselves in one form or another.
the only other thing that I'd like to, mention is that a lot of the effort that we're putting into getting these kids ready to go to college, we're doing in the junior year, or maybe even the senior year. But really, often the prerequisites of many of the courses that you have to take in order to get into some of the more competitive schools and to be an attractive candidate for those colleges that are more selective, you've got to start out very early. And everybody says that if we could encourage those kids and make them realize that the opportunities are here to take advantage of, and that the earlier they get started, the better shape they'll be in. And as we continue to have more advanced courses, we expand the different things that are available to them, they all depend on a beginning. And if they don't have those basic skills to be able to work with some of those more advanced concepts, they're not going to make it. So I just pass that out. Yes.
I just want to add, I believe I was here when that presentation was given, and I think that the committee should be reminded that one of the things that came out of all the guidance work of calling kids who had been gone for a year, and it speaks very highly of the guidance department at the high school, is the number of kids who completed their first year, weren't home by Christmas, so they had chosen a school that they wanted to complete. And number two, they had not switched a major, which is the big discussion at higher ed, is kids going into especially STEAM fields, science, technology, and math, and not being able to cut it and having to cross over to a liberal arts, or I have a liberal arts degree, so I'll put myself in that pool. But so I think that speaks very highly to the conversations that guidance counselors are having for kids, putting them in appropriate schools, stretch schools that end up making them drop out because they feel like they can't compete, putting them in the degrees that they want to pursue and that they're qualified to pursue. I don't want that to be lost with probably a discussion that's beyond the guidance, and that is affordability of education. We do live in Vermont, which has one of the most expensive state university systems in the country, and so that should not be lost in the discussion as far as this is concerned.
Thank you. I don't want to. Okay. Well, are there any other questions? And thank you very much for coming. We'll have a lot. I hope that we will have, once we get an idea of where those kids are going in terms of college, well, not necessarily college, but they could be going on to whatever they're doing when they're leaving. And I think it would be extremely interesting for the board to know that. And hopefully they'll all do well. Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks a lot. Steve, do you have anything else?
That's it.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, did you have a report? Oh. Can we have Jason go first?
Well, no, he's down a little bit
Oh,
farther.
down,
down. Yeah.
okay. All right, so, just a couple of, mostly calendar stuff as we are entering the holiday season at the middle school, so just like everybody else, we're lots of busy things. But tomorrow night, here at the middle school, we are going to be hosting a parent information night from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We have a couple of community partners coming in to talk about vaping, which was on the front page of the banner this morning. Also about helping parents kind of identify at-risk behaviors that they might be observing in their teenagers. We really encourage folks to come out and participate. Again, that's tomorrow night from 6 to 7 here at the middle school. Next week, Wednesday the 21st, is a half day for moms and dads who might be having those discussions with middle schoolers of whether or not they have to go to school the day before Thanksgiving. They do. We have an 11:15 dismissal. For my planner kiddos, November 30th is the end of our first trimester. So this is the time we start encouraging kids to make sure that they're getting their work completed. If you have any makeups, now's a good time because it's going to go really quickly. There's only a couple days left this week, a couple days next week. It was already mentioned by the high school, and I appreciate that. 8th graders will be visiting the CDC as teams December 4th through the 6th. Middle schoolers love going to the big building. They love seeing all the programs. And it's usually after this visit that they start saying that they're so done with middle school. For moms and dads who have 6th graders, parent conferences will be held December 13th and 14th. Those are half days for 6th graders. So they will be going home at 11:15. Sorry, 7th and 8th grade, you will be with us the whole day. And then last thing, as far as middle school events, band and chorus concerts, 'tis the season. The 17th is the chorus concert. It's here at the middle school starting at 7 o'clock. The very next evening on the 8th, the middle school band will be playing. I really encourage folks to come out. It's a nice holiday tradition. It's usually very well attended. Absolutely bring all your family, grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles. They would all be welcome. Steve's already mentioned it, but I wanted to thank the Tim Foley and Lynn Sweet High School CDC staff. They put on a tremendous show, Les Mis, and they were so accommodating as we had a number of middle schoolers participate in the cast, and of course Jason was outstanding in his role. So, that's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Tim? If not, we'll go on to our student report. Jason?
Good evening, everyone. So, first off, I want to start with the volleyball tournament that was concluded today. It was sponsored by Student Senate, and this year there's no restriction. The faculty was there. We had our new AD, Ms. Hoyt, joining, Mr. Molloy, Mr. Upright. They were all participating in this, and there's no gender restriction, so you can make up a team with 6 people however you want. We're trying to promote the idea of equality, and it was great because students loved it. We have a lot of teams this year, and it was a great tournament. We also are delivering Thanksgiving dinner from Student Senate to a family. Senate members bought food, and we all gathered together. We'll deliver to one family in need, and hope they have a good Thanksgiving next week. Next one will be, we are planning to give out a survey to Abby's group, our launch provider, because doing our launch 2B, 3A, and 3B blocks can get a little bit messy and loud because there's many people there. So we want to see if there's anything we can do to make cafeteria more neat and people can get their food on time. There's no chaos during lunch times because everybody's hungry. So. We also talked about Winter Ball. Winter Ball is one of the dance we're going to hold in high school. We are planning the dates, and we'll meet with the administrators, and we'll discuss the dates, how this is going to be function, and we'll finalize. And it's one of the events that students love. dance between prom and fall. People join in and have fun after the first semester final exam is over. Today we had a principal lunch with Principal Mr. Nixon, so students would join in together, sit with Mr. Nixon and talking about like school events, getting to know each other, how can we make the school better. And there were a lot of people there doing supper times, and there's some great discussions among different groups. Winter sports starts on the 26th of November, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving break is over. And middle school starts, I think middle school starts on Sunday too. So we have to sign the forms of participation, and parents should sign it so we can participate. And all students are encouraged to participate in winter sport because it's a great extracurricular and a great co-extracurricular, and you can have a lot of fun in those sports. During holiday season, we always do spirit sharing. Spirit sharing is which we adopt families from the elementary school, family who are in need, and they will give us a list of students or kids who wish for like Christmas gift, holiday gift, and high school at different clubs and activities and class seminar would like come to pick a family. We'll look, okay, so those family want those gifts, and we'll like contribute money to buy and wrap them to give to them. It's a great cause because we do fundraisers, and we have different clubs have a different account, and we use this money to help kids in the community who might need something. Like some of them want boots, some of them need gloves, which they don't have, and it's very helpful for them to have those because winter is coming. So it's a very warming thing to do. So just want to follow up with Ms. Vanderbilt. The counselors are coming to our senior seminars talking about college. How have you get your Common App set up? Have you get your Navion set up? Have you asked your teacher about recommendation? Do you do college visits yet? And they're preparing us for the next year. For if you're not going to college, we have like military representatives, our Department of Labor coming talk to us. So I think people should have like a general idea of what they want to do and how you get there. And the counseling office is out there for you guys. Just come down there, and the door is always open. And the last thing will be the show. So as people already mentioned, the show went great. We had young cast, not only middle school, but also students from elementary school. And they loved it. They enjoyed hanging out with high schoolers. The environment was great. And it created a lot of diversity because it was not only high schools. It was like middle school, young cast. So the group was really diverse. People have fun. And we got great feedback from the community. And the next production will be Romeo and Juliet, which will go on in February next year.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jason? If not, then we can move on. Education report, Dave, do you want to work with that?
Yeah, so the Ed Committee met, most of you were here, I think, and over at least the end of it. We were given some new course proposals for next year, and the committee recommended sending all of them onto the board for its consideration. And I'm going to let Steve talk in some detail about the English courses because I don't have the exact titles, but all of these classes are semester-long, long block classes that would be graded. And there is an art class in printmaking. There is a tech class in 3D printing and robotics. In the social studies department, a civics class called American Government and Politics. And then a series of English classes, which we all thought sounded quite interesting. So, Steve, did you want to?
Could I just add one thing to that? Also, during that discussion, Steve informed us that we will still have the advanced placement classes and the honors classes within this isn't going to supersede those classes.
Thank you, David. Basically, what we discussed is eliminating the survey courses, English 11 and English 12. and replacing those with a series of one-credit electives. And there are 10 individual courses, and for those of you who aren't here, I'll just try to do this really quickly. Reading and Writing in the Real World, a semester course that focuses on practical writing for the workplace and beyond. Fiction into Film, which shows the tradition of how film and novels coexist. The Dark Side of Humanity, the course addresses the question of who are monsters in society. Harry Potter, the Literary and Mythical Origins, which looks at Jane Austen, J.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and other classics which gave the inspiration for Harry Potter. Film as Literature, Popular Literature, which deals with recent and current top popular literature. Audio Literature, does literature change when it's listened to instead of read? And 2 courses for Essential Reading and Essential Writing. Those would be 2 years combined. A seminar in American Literature, a seminar in British Literature, and a seminar in Autobiography, Memoir, and Identity. So the students would have those in the course catalog, and they would choose 2 of those over the course of their 2-year English requirement.
Thank you.
David, Steve, would you just go over, as you did with the Education Committee, that we still are going to be demanding of the students that they reach a certain ability level before we kind of let them go and pick their classes? In other words, there'll be some way of ensuring that they have the basic skills to be able to move on, not only with those courses, but whatever they want to do later.
Yeah, the basic ability levels and the standards that are attached to these courses are the exact same as the other course. It's just a matter, again, it's like teaching reading. It's the difference of you use book A or book B. You're still doing reading, and you're still doing analysis and character analysis and plots and things like that. So it's just a matter of, instead of taking a survey course with a lot of material that's given to you by the teacher, it's breaking it down into individual genres and areas that would pique students' interest, so they can still do their reading, still do the writing, and achieve the same skill level that they would in the other classes, but they're doing it through a focus which really interests them rather than a general survey.
Are there any questions of Steve? Granted, this all has to go through the Finance Committee in terms of teachers and everything else, but what the board needs to do is just approve the concept of these classes as presented by the English department and Steve. Is that right, Dave?
I believe that is correct.
So moved.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on it? Anybody have any questions on it? It's a major undertaking, and as I think Amy pointed out, we're certainly very appreciative of the work that was done by the English department and the administration in pulling this all together. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed or abstentions? Very good.
That's it.
Do you want to go those position things or not?
No, I think maybe we can hold off on that. until-
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Okay, we can move on then. We go to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to yield the bulk of my time to the presentation on the annual progress review. So at this time, I'll call up Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau, and she's going to be assisted by the principals and by our data coach, Melissa Senecal.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
We're gonna have
I'm not.
So I'm Laura I'm the assistant superintendent. I'm here with Melissa Sedical, our SBS data coach, who helped to put these presentations together and work with principals, and Mr. Nixon and Mr. Payne. The first part of the presentation that we give every year is from me. It's the state and district perspective. And then Mr. Nixon and Mr. Payne will take over and get more specific about the middle school and high school. So as we begin, the first part of our presentation is to remind you that the state of Vermont is working to become in compliance with the Every Student Succeeds Act, which has three major targets: to prioritize support for our most vulnerable students, to prepare students to be members of a growing Vermont economy, and frame proposals that will be affordable to implement and maintain. So the big change is the annual snapshot. So the state has really been thoughtful in creating their accountability system to really reflect on the whole child and to really look at our school systems through multiple lenses. So we know that these future presentations will be guided by this annual snapshot. The presentation we give you tonight is going to look similar to prior years, but we are not going into we're not breaking things, data points out, because we are waiting to see the state's snapshot, because again, that's going to inform our future presentations to you. We do want to highlight the 5 areas. There will be indicators that you will see under the annual snapshot: in academic proficiency, personalization, high quality staffing, safe and healthy schools, and investment priorities. And we look forward to sharing with you this information. Melissa Sedical attended state level training, and we look forward to that in 2019. Continuous improvement is, again, an expectation, and the district is required to have a continuous improvement plan, and then that aligns with our Vermont educational quality standards, that's data informed, it aligns to state and federal resources, and supports our most vulnerable students. Tonight, I will share the overview of the district goals with you, and then Mr. Nixon and Mr. Payne will also share their plans. What you'll notice different this year is the language change idea. That's a new phrase. Change idea references in your continuous action plan. What are the things that you're focusing on this year? We want to remind you that as part of this process, that all of our schools are required to have a multi-tiered system of support. It needs to be a balanced approach between academics, behavior, and social emotional. And I heard that conversation even prior in your educational meeting. So we're really looking at all of these aspects when we look at our children. And the work around creating a proficiency-based learning system helps to create our Tier 1 system. So you have an overview of the district level data for grades 3 to 9, and as a reminder, 9th grade is a change this year. The state, this was last spring was the first year that 9th graders took the SBAC. Prior to that, it was 11th grade. So again, this just gives you a district snapshot, and also for ELA. We felt very comfortable putting in our own attendance data because we generate that from the Infinite Campus, and you receive attendance information in your board packet, so we were using that information from last year to give you percentages. So just to highlight the district continuous improvement plan goals, there are 5. And the first one is all about our SMART goal for ELA and academic proficiency. I know in prior years, this board has asked about reading in particular. What are we doing in our district about reading instruction? And I can tell you that at the district level, we are focused on Goal 1 this year. It might not be something you hear about, but I am going to share it with the K through 2 level. Part of our literacy needs assessment was that we purchased a primary program for K through 2, and we are also providing professional learning, targeted professional learning for our teachers, not only for Tier 1, but for our interventionists that are providing other support. So just to highlight how that change idea piece works. Goal 2 is our SMART goal for math, and it's also academic proficiency, and you can see where our target areas also resonate there. Goal 3 is about school climate and safe and healthy schools, and as a district, we have a goal of decreasing behavior referrals. So we are all of our schools are working on creating positive learning environments and just decreasing interruptions during instruction. Goal 4 is around personalization and revising our district approach is revising our communication feed. Goal 5 is under the direction of our HR director, Nick Galt, and it's all around high-quality staffing. And you can see the 2 action steps in regard to our hiring practices and looking at our supervision and evaluation tools. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Kane, and then Mr. Dixon will take over, and at the end, I'll come back together and share the assessments this year, and then we'll take any questions you have.
So I'll go through these first couple of screens kind of quickly, but the middle school faculty at the start of the year revisited its vision and what we thought were 3 really important pillars to kind of keep coming back to as staff. We're looking for consistency across the building, engagement of all kids, and showing growth over time. Some of the data that we're going to show you tonight will show you how we're working on that. We also have our 3 expectations of kids. You see that around the building: be respectful, be responsible, be your best effort. To revisit, and I know some of you folks in the audience and on the board have seen this presentation. So last year when we sat and talked about goals, we really kind of break down goals into 2 pieces or 2 subjects. In math and reading, we're assessing kids using math, which is one measure that we use when we give to kids in the fall, the winter, and the spring here at the middle school, and also the SBAC, which is given in the spring. We have a specific goal in math. We want to see kids grow on average 2 to 5% in both mathematics and reading, 2 to 5%. And then there's specific proficiency, which is kids demonstrating a level of proficiency. We want to see a percentage of that. You can see that there, 30 to 33% of kids in math, 37 to 40% of kids in ELA. So the chart, I like the chart, but I'm going to take a moment to explain it to folks. Imagine this as 2 parts. So this is showing you the growth that we talked about when using the math test. Start with math on the left side, and that is from 2014 to the green stripe in the middle. That is math of the last year. And what you can see is that in math, the average student is showing 2.2, 2.3, 2.5, 2.3. Reading, or ELA, measure is starting on the white column in the middle, moving to the right in green, 2014 through 2018. You can see that we have some work to do. Last year, the average growth was 1.04%. This is SBAC scores. Again, this is a test that's administered to all students in this school, grades 6, 7, and 8. You'll see that over the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade it shows improvement over the schools. I will put the caveat, though, that those are different cohorts of kids. Those are 6th graders last year, 7th graders, and 8th graders. But it is a positive trend that you see kids, a growing number of kids being proficient as we move through that. And ELA. ELA shows, again, it's 3 separate cohorts of kiddos, but you are seeing a trend. The challenge for us is you can see that we are still lagging behind the state, and I'll try to address that as far as what we were doing in the building and what we will be doing in the building this year. So, Ms. Boudreau talked about continuous improvement goals. Every school should have them. We do. And ours, you'll see as you read through our bulleted pieces, they have very direct connections to the district. We continue to work with a literacy coach, Diana Malcolm from the Hill. She worked with us last year. She's working with us this year. She has been great in helping us kind of figure out what are we doing for interventions for kiddos, specifically helping us develop a screener that we put all kids through and identify areas of weakness and then connect them with an intervention program to help them close that gap. We also continue to work on our PLP system. This is the personalization, helping kids, figure out what their strengths are, what their interests are. Helps with that conversation we talked about that they're going to start having with the high school and the CDC. Also, a big thing for us this year is all students working within a proficiency-based system, which that's going to take a lot of work. Our continuous improvement plan, like I said, is linked to the SBSUs, and we'll keep going forward with that. So this year, the goal continues to be in both math and ELA. Again, 2 measures. These are just 2 measures. We measure kids in lots of different ways to give them feedback of their progress. But the math goal continues to be 2 to 5% growth. What MAP tells us is that if you're seeing really effective Tier 1 instruction, a kiddo should demonstrate 2 to 5% growth every year. That's really what you want to have them doing so they can be on the grade level. The proficiency mark continues to be for us the 30, 33, and 37 to 40%. I will just say this too, that as a principal, if I had to choose the 2 sides of the chart, and I don't have to, I'm looking at growth. I recognize that I have some kids coming into the middle school who are not on grade level, and I want to see them growing. Proficiency is that next goal for them. Okay. The change ideas, these are things that we are doing this year to improve student achievement. So I spoke about, we have this universal literacy screener. We used that this year as we built our schedule for kids. We started out with MAP, and then we had levels as we screened kids, and for our more intensive needs kids, we had specific interventions. So Wilson Reading is something folks are probably familiar with, Just Words. We also adopted a program, Extreme Reading, and we feel that we have a much better approach of identifying kids and placing them in front of the right teacher, the right interventionist. We also continue to work with our literacy coach. Diana is back with us. She's also, if you've been following, she's now working with elementary schools within the SBSU. We think she's great. She's working with a staff member, a current middle school staff member, to develop that person into a coaching candidate, so that when Diana will, eventually she'll have to move out, she'll have to move on to other schools, we would have a person within the building who can continue to support teachers and teaching kids how to read and how to improve literacy. We have also, math this year, the math department has started to identify a process similar to what ELA is. Who are our kids who need math interventions, and planning to provide supports for them either through a team time intervention, or we also have the possibility of math interventions. Should I take questions? All right.
Okay, as far as the high school is concerned, this is our visions and our expectations. We like the fact that our visions and expectations not only extend in the classroom, but out into the real world, into students' lives. That they are going to persevere, they're going to be tolerant and accountable, and they'll be 21st century learners. And our expectations that all of our students are respectful, responsible, and show their best effort. Our math and ELA goal is our students in grades 9 to 10 will meet 95% participation rate on the math testing, and I'm glad to say that we did meet that 95%. For our spring math scores, you can see we're a little bit below the state, and we're looking at how we can address this. It was switched last year to the 9th grade, so from what I understand, that threw a bit of a curveball to everyone. And so now that we're realizing that it's 9th grade, we're also focusing on looking at 8th grade data so we can target some of the weaknesses that certain students may have to sort of improve their scores the following year. Another thing that's important to keep in mind, we are looking at the schedule, and we'll talk about that in a second at the high school, but currently the schedule of the high school is a semester-based schedule, which means theoretically a student can take a math course in the first semester and then not take one again to the second semester of their next year, which means they would go an entire year without math the way our school schedule is worked up. In this particular case, when they take testing in the spring, they may not take their courses until January or February, which means some of our students are in a math classroom for 6 or 7 weeks before they have to take this SBAC test. So that's why it's a little detrimental to the scheduling. ELA is basically the same situation, looking at the data differently, looking at 8th grade data, and looking at how we schedule the test. Our continuous improvement plan that we are continually going to effectively implement evidence-based instructional practices, assessments, and core programs, that we will continue to work towards reducing behavior referrals by 25% and increase attendance. We're doing this through trauma training, through MTSS, and that we will continue to communicate about proficiency-based information training and student progress, and we have reached out to parents along the way to enable us to do that. Our math and ELA goal, as Tim said earlier, in 2019, we're in the 2 to 5% growth rate also for our math test, and that 31 to 34% of our students in 9th and 10th grade will be proficient, and 44 to 47% will be proficient in English. And we're hoping that the work we're doing in those departments and some of the data that we're looking at, that we'll be able to implement classroom practice that will bring those numbers up to that by the due date. These are our change ideas. These are some of the things that we are working on to bring about changes in the school. We will train teachers to design and implement departmental common assessments with higher order thinking questions. Dave, this is reference to when you asked what that additional page was that we handed out. That was a depth of knowledge, which attaches to the higher order thinking questions. So basically what we're doing is all departments are working on creating question banks of higher order thinking, which establishes that those questions are much more rigorous than just rote memorization questions, and they will compile their common assessments, such as final exam assessments, based on that material. So now that we know that all the questions on those assessments are higher order thinking, and they are common assessments among teachers within departments, then we have more reliable data to see exactly where our kids are. We will train and deploy data coaches on a departmental and school-wide basis to analyze data to better improve instruction. Those data coaches will be able to work on those common assessment scores and tell us where our strengths and weaknesses are and what we need to improve and work on. And then basically school-wide, they'll be able to look at standardized test scores and produce the same effect for us. We will create a master schedule committee comprising members of all the stakeholder groups to create a master schedule that will better serve the educational needs of our students. Going back to just what I mentioned before about the SBAC and how our schedule could be detrimental to that. We're looking into the schedule. We have members on the committee, teachers, representatives of different schools, representatives of the board, and we have representatives of parent groups and community groups. So we have all the stakeholders, and we're working on that right now. And we'll continue to train staff in MTSS. Christopher runs the MTS group, Christopher Barnes, and he is continually meeting with MTS members on a monthly basis to make sure about timely interventions and the academic and behavioral needs of our students.
What's that acronym stand for? M?
Multi-tiered support.
Systems.
And these are the resources. We continue to need collaboration time for teachers to work on aligning the statement about the standards of the proficiency-based learning system, and we continue to need board support in providing stipends for school leadership teams, data teams, and teacher leaders.
So to come back around to the end, we want to share with you the state level assessments that we'll be giving this year as part of the state's accountability system. At the top you see the ELA and Math Smarter Balance Assessment, which again this year will be given to grades 3 through 9. You can see the testing window. This will be again the second year for the state science assessment at grades 5, 8, and 11. And you can also have the window there. The state physical education assessment is now part of our accountability system. So last year was the trial run, and it is definitely part of it. We are the only state in the United States that has this as part of our accountability system. And a group of our PE teachers are going tomorrow because you have to be trained to give the assessment. You will notice one change for the high school with the physical education assessment. Last year, it was a choice whether you gave it at 9th or 10th grade, and this year the state has told us it will be at 9th grade. The last item assessment is new. I think it's the final piece of your assessment system. Thank you. The final piece of the assessment system is going to be a climate survey. It's going to be given to students in grades 5 through 8, 10, and all adults working in Vermont schools. It will be given in the spring of 2019. It will be an online survey. The state is contracted with a provider to implement that survey, and our data is that training. So we wanted to thank you for this time. Again, this gives you an overview, and if you have any questions,
And on this evaluation, I realize that the MAP test is not a state level test, but that's still going to be given.
MAP is one of our, we're also required to have, we're required to have a comprehensive assessment system.
Right.
Local Central helps to monitor that system, so it's a combination of the state assessments. It would be that the SBAC is one assessment given at one moment in time that measures proficiency, whereas MAP is a benchmark that we do 2 or 3 times a year that helps to show us the growth speeds that we're looking for.
So we're obviously
Still
going
have it in our
to,
system, correct. Yes.
Can I just ask a question about that map test
Sure.
thing, while we're on that? 2 or 3 times a year, so it may, is it,
Depends on the age level.
okay.
That's- Yeah.
And I thought I understood that the 2 to 5% goal was essentially September through
It's the
June.
growth that you want to see over the course of the year.
Okay,
yes.
and then, but I
yes,
did,
proficiency.
but then Steve, did you just say winter to winter? Was I misinterpreting?
Yes, you are correct.
Or was
High
that
school
different?
does winter to winter because of, so with their assessment cycle, when they were building their MTSS system,
Yeah.
that was a decision that they were able to make with using that testing to go winter to winter and align with the block schedule.
Is it only, the tests only administered in the winter, or are they several times?
Nope, they still,
So the way it works is because, as I mentioned, we're on the, we're on semesterized schedule. So
Yeah.
all the kids will take it at the beginning and the end of each course. Okay, so imagine the kids who just took it in September, they're going to take it again in January. Well, the way the window works is we have that center window. That center window captures all the kids because some kids are finishing the course and some kids are starting the course. So everybody gets it beginning and end of course. Everybody also gets it, a little different way to think about it, but everybody also gets it at the center of the year. Okay, those kids who just started that second semester course in January, end of January, are going to get it again in the late spring. Okay, so the only way you can really measure everybody at once, that's why we speak about the winter, but everybody gets the beginning and end, and the teachers actively use it.
There are national norms that are winter to winter, so we are being compared to other 9th graders.
This is a question for Tim. Can you talk a little bit about 8th grade math? What's going on there? It seems like it's the only one that's approaching state average. Can you talk about what's going on in 8th grade math and what, if anything, you're using to out of that grade to implement across the system?
So I just want to remind you that when you're looking at it's 3 different groups of kids. So
Sure.
it's not a growth of a kid.
No,
over
understood.
time. But yeah, a couple things are working in your favor. You've had them in the middle school for 3 years, so there's quite a bit of conversation going on between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers. I have a pretty strong data team that's really kind of taking a look at kids and saying, where are the areas of weakness? Matt was doing a fantastic job of that, kind of connecting it back to grade level standards. And the third thing is, although we don't have an intervention block for all kids yet, we're working toward that. You have, through working with special education and the department, you have the opportunity to do some intervention and some catch-up for kids. So I think you're starting to see the culminating effect of that in 8th grade. More and more kids are catching up.
Nelson had a question. Nelson, did you?
Well, I was just looking at the Vermont climate question for all adults working in Vermont schools, and I was wondering if they were making the school boards take that, because it might make sense.
Yeah, I don't see them on the list, but, yeah, we could certainly do it, yeah.
Do you take a look at a given grade as it goes through? In other words, we take a look at the 6th grade and then put those grades together to see how they have improved over a period of 2 or 3 years? I realize this is only 2 years, but
Following with the kids is what
yeah, following the kids rather than this, because we're not comparing apples with apples, really.
So that's a great question. That's, we are waiting for the annual snapshot, because we want to see how the state's going to be presenting this data. So the hard part about the hard part about the adoption of ESSA, which was a good thing, is that it takes time as you rebuild an accountability system for data to become reliable and valid. So we are hoping with the snapshot that we'll have a clearer picture, and we're going to follow their lead in how we present in the future.
Okay. So we will have it in the future.
That's what we're
That's what
going to
we're
see.
we're being told. We'll have a snapshot of proficiency and we'll have a snapshot of growth. Farther than that, we want to provide you more details.
Okay, very good. Are there any?
But Dave's got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tim, you say your literacy coach is from The Hill. What does that mean?
Yeah, The Hill is a vendor.
That's the actual organization that she works for, the Hill for Literacy. Sorry. John, she walked over the mountain. Yeah.
Well, she came over the mountain to get here.
Okay.
Yeah, she comes out of Worcester, and you think that she had to travel the Oregon Trail to find it.
Almost.
Are there any questions of Laura, Tim, or Steve?
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I just want to revisit my question about the 8th grade math. You said that you have a particularly strong data team there. What does that encompass? Like, what does the data team mean? And
Sure.
are you using their successes for the 6th grade and 7th grade data teams?
Yes, so the data team is made up of teachers from all 3 grade levels.
Okay.
So there are 2 members of the math department, 2 English teachers, and I have a behavior interventionist to sit there. So they look at both academic and behavior data.
Oh, so it's school-wide when you
Yes.
say data team? Okay.
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
not a grade level specific.
okay.
So like I said, I have teachers, an English teacher from the 6th grade, I have a 8th grade math teacher who sits on it. And basically what they're looking at is, I can go to them as a resource, fall math just closed. So they can generate the reports and say, hey, here's a snapshot of your 6th grade. Here, you can do individual kid reports, and you can kind of give an overall snapshot of, hey, they have a weakness in, fractions or something, and you need to be aware of that. And they can then give that information to grade level teachers, and that helps grade level teachers do, what am I working on in instruction? What do I need to go back and kind of make sure everybody's been retaught? Within a classroom, and you're breaking kids up into small groups to give them, where they are at, that kind of data really helps inform that. But it's across, it's not a data team assigned to any one grade level.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should mention IXL, which started in 9th grade.
The other thing the high school has, and we use a computer program, a subscription called IXL. And IXL will connect directly to math. So if your kiddo takes math in the fall, and they'll generate a report, and then a math teacher can take a look at that, and by the standard, it'll say, hey, this is where they are ready to learn. So you can either provide an intervention, or you can actually provide an enrichment for kids. And you can, my 8th grade math teachers get all excited because it's a little circle that goes across that, they like to push the circles across the board. They get very excited about that. But IXL allows you in time, if you have team time or even within the classroom, and again, if you're breaking kids up, you can say, all right, I put some problems in there for you to be working on, and it's right where the kid is at. So it's not kind of blanket approach, you can specify just for the individual kid as well. And it's been very, the math teachers have been very positive. The high school uses it extensively.
So that starts in the 8th grade, though?
I'm sorry?
It starts in the 8th grade, or is
No,
it
it's
6th through
available in
8th?
6th, 7th, and 8th
Oh, okay.
grade now. We have enough licenses to provide coverage for all
Okay.
kids. in the
It did start in our 8th grade, and again, due to the excitement, then Tim was
Oh.
able to bring it to others.
Oh, great.
So we want to see that
Yeah.
impact grow,
Oh, that's great.
So,
although we sometimes
no, I just added something.
You added something, okay, never mind, then we're good.
I want to make sure everybody's got a license. They
Yeah.
send me emails all the time.
Dave?
So this is a question for Steve, but maybe directed to larger group, actually. Since it sounds like you're tackling through the master schedule committee the issue of long blocks and semester-long classes, semester-long credits rather than year-long, is that, did I understand that correctly, Steve?
What we're doing is we're looking at, back in August, we started with the staff, and we asked the staff to give us input on what they thought worked and didn't work with the schedule. Then we convened this committee, and we presented that information to the committee. And eventually, we're going to then poll the students, and we're going to poll community members and parents. And then we're going to look at a variety of other schedules that exist out there and which one fits all the variable needs that we have within the building. So, it can get all encompassing at some point. We have to, because there's representatives of the CDC on the committee, because how does the schedule interact between the two schools? What does the schedule do to impact after-school activities, sports, those type of things? And if we're going to use a year-long class system rather than a semester.
So, my question actually was, would you be interested in looking at the equally thorny issue of start time? Maybe you are looking at that as part of this question.
That
So,
is part of it.
and I am asking it in the context of looking at the test scores and the concern that I think is out there that because we're asking high school students to get up before their bodies want them to get up, and we're bringing them into the building and asking them to learn before their brains are ready in the morning to learn, that we might be putting our kids at a disadvantage through the time of day that is starting. So, and obviously, this is a big question that involves the whole district, but.
Right. Addressing the start time is in the continuous improvement plan, and so that is the place where we plan to address that within the scheduling, the confines of the scheduling committee. But again, much like I said with the schedule, start times have dramatic impact on outside the building just as much as it does
Right.
inside the building.
And there's somebody from this board, this committee, on the scheduling committee, did you say?
Yes.
Do we know who that is?
Carrie.
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 Thank you.
I have one more thing. Yeah.
Good. Any more questions of Laura or any other people that helped present that program? Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to the next version.
So when the vote on Act 46 consolidation went down in our district, it appeared that MAU was basically going to be immune to any actions of Act 46. And it was going to really involve the consolidation of the 4 elementary school districts into one. Now it appears that the Secretary of Education's proposal tomorrow to the State Board goes through. This supervisory union may have a second high school. So in Barry tomorrow, where I will be attending, though I don't know to what good that will do, because a recommendation is already presented to the board that both Arlington and Sandgate will come under this supervisory union beginning in 2020, which is only a year after the forced consolidation of the elementary schools. So the impact is, I think, immense. And with this short notice, this really has come kind of out of left field. We've known about this proposal a little over a week. It was a week last Monday that was the first that we heard mentioned that that the state board was considering changing supervisory union boundary lines. It's always been an authority given to the state board and to the state board only. It really isn't part of Act 46, but it's certainly, but Act 46 is parameters of how big a district has to be is, I believe, the reason they are looking at this now. So just a heads up, I know you probably, some of you might have saw the headline in the paper today. Like I said, it did come as a surprise. I did send the Secretary of Education an email by last Friday, which is he had asked me to respond by the end of the week, but I also pointed out that there were no board meetings. The supervisory union had not met to give any type of formal input to like how this impact would be. And I did have 14 of 20 board members respond. I compiled those and sent their responses on. And it was a wide range from people a couple who seemed more than ready to welcome them in, to a couple who strenuously object, to those, some reluctant acceptance would be how I would word it, that if it happened. But we're concerned, particularly in central office, that so here we go from a consolidation of 4 boards to 1 in the elementary, and now we're going to add 2 more board meetings in. We're going to increase the number of employees, so the impact on HR, increase the number of students, which has an impact on curriculum and special education. And those are just the ones that we're thinking of in just a 1-week notice. So Arlington, from what I can pick up in my conversations with their superintendent, is just as strenuously against this. And we had always looked to, from our perspective, that they were going to go north of here, which is where they wanted to go, but that option has seemed to have been closed down. I understand that, BRSU is student count, maybe a third of our district, so it was like, why wouldn't go there? But they do have, I believe, 11 towns that contribute to that, that are part of that supervisory union. So that is a big burden on that supervisory union. And I hope that this is just a rumor that isn't true, but the latest one I've heard that by spring, Searsburg and Reedsboro will be coming this way too, because they got to put them somewhere. So I'll keep you informed. So I'll be, like I said, that starts at 8:30 tomorrow morning in Barry. Public comment begins at 8:45. Then they go into business. And those of you who've been to the state board meetings before, that they really limit how much participation there can be. So when they get to this topic, which is slated for 11 o'clock on their agenda, whether we'll be able to address it or only address it in the 8:45 brief public comment period. We'll see. I hope that they'll listen to reason. And what I guess our biggest message is stop, and to allow time for this. It doesn't have to happen now. Yes, by November 30th, you have to come forward with your plan for Act 46 mergers, but the supervisory order changes could come at another time. Allow more time for input, allow more time for us to absorb what impact this would be and everything from grant funding. Does this change our economic profile as a district that may impact, everything from title money to direct aid? I don't know. We haven't had time to look at that. So.
Well, I think all those questions have been answered. Jim, could you just explain, at least to me, what's going to happen with the 4 schools, and what's the timeline there?
So the 4 elementary boards, Shasbury, Woodford, Pownell, and Shasbury, continue to operate until June 30th. They all have openings coming up in the March election. Instruction that I am receiving is that they should go ahead and hold that election, because they still need to function as a board, actually even beyond the June 30th date a little, because everything from there may be one more warrant after their business ceases, or acceptance of their audit, which would come later on. So they still need to function. I don't know what will happen in the March town meeting election, that people will want to run for a board for a seat that is going to not exist. And then what the recommendation would be to the board, then you can appoint somebody to to have that seat, so if nobody runs for it, they could maybe, my recommendation is to appoint the person that currently has that seat if they want to keep it. If the state board votes by that November 30th deadline to make the merge, then I have to form a transitional board, which is made up of the chair and clerk of all those 4 boards, so an 8-member board, and then we will begin meeting to start the process to get the election warned for this new board and get that new board in place. It's a
Will
little-
that be in March, then the following March, or?
Probably sooner is what I'm being advised, not to wait till March, which, I mean, wait, there's a special election, there's more funds for that. And keep in mind, because we did not vote consolidation, none of the incentives are coming our way, so there's no financial money for this. And that will be my other argument about taking in these other SUs. Where's the money for that? Because, just, the impact on that and these other things, we have a unified teacher's contract. We have a unified set of policy. Arlington has a different teacher's contract, a different policy manual. I mean, it's not insurmountable, but it's going to take work. And maybe they don't change because they function as a separate district, but then how is that efficiency that we're supposed to be gaining under Act 46?
Well, it's a work in progress.
So we'll have overlapping board, it'll be an interesting spring because this transitional board will be meeting, and I didn't even get into what might happen with budgets, whether we have a blended budget or vote on individual budgets. Still waiting for a timeline from the state on that, so.
Well, I'm sure we all have questions, but Dave?
Just a comment, actually, part of the recommendation was that Arlington immediately appoint 3, not 2, but 3 board members.
3, yeah, we're gonna
Can you
object to
take care of
that too, because maybe, I'm thinking maybe they misunderstood that our 3 members, there's 2 members and an alternate, but why would they get 3 and everybody else
Well, it
gets?
also makes me wonder how carefully they were actually looking at some other
Right,
details.
and, yeah, so that certainly was a flag that, we need to correct before they vote on it, because why would they have 3 and every other community has 2, and that, the other thing, tomorrow afternoon on the state board agenda is the draft articles of agreement, which is really, a point of contention with Bennington, because they're still sticking to only 2 seats for Bennington. So I think you are Bennington here, right? So Bennington, you're gonna lose your own school board. You're only gonna get 2 seats on the combined board. Oh, and by the way, here comes Arlington, and they can keep their board intact.
And Sandy.
And Sandgate.
Well, our legislators, now we have such influence on the legislature to change it.
Do we have any around? No, we don't. So,
I
yeah.
have to think of the Senate instead of thinking of the House, because their representatives are equal, like 2 to each. Think of it in a different way. Equal representation to each state.
We're gonna stay positive.
Well, it's never dull. Okay, we can move on then, if there's anybody else wants to? Okay, I'd just like to tell you that Nick, our Human Relations Officer, has been putting together and working with the Teachers Association to get going on negotiations for a contract, for 2 contracts really, for the ESP, for the support personnel, as well as for the teachers. The first meeting will be in December, and we hope it all goes smoothly.
If everybody commits to the date, we hope. Hopefully
Yeah,
that-
well, and when I checked with him, he said, that- anyway, there we are. I think that, what's her name is, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other things that should be brought before this board under other? We do not have an executive session meeting, which is...
There's no change from last month, so there's nothing new to report at this time.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Any, all in favor? Aye. Very good. Objections? Whatever.
So Tim, I was up there.